Have you ever complained about a difficult day at work? Maybe your boss was demanding. Maybe your shift felt endless. Or perhaps you thought your job couldn't possibly get any worse. Now imagine waking up every morning knowing that your work involved crawling through human waste, breathing poisonous fumes, or risking death before sunset. For most of human history, work wasn't about following your passion. It was about survival. Ancient civilizations built magnificent temples, towering pyramids, vast empires, and thriving cities. But behind every great civilization were millions of ordinary workers whose names have long been forgotten, while kings, generals, and philosophers filled the history book. Many laborers endured jobs so dangerous, filthy, and exhausting that most people today wouldn't last a single day. Some faced deadly diseases, some worked underground without ever seeing sunlight, others knew that one small mistake could cost them their lives. Today, we're counting down 12 of the worst jobs in the ancient world and discovering the people who performed the backbreaking, terrifying, and often thankless work that helped build history itself. Number 12, Fuller. Imagine washing someone's dirty laundry without soap, without detergent, and using human urine instead. As disgusting as it sounds, this was the everyday reality for fullers in ancient Rome. Roman clothing, especially expensive wool garments, collected dirt, body oils, and stains that ordinary water couldn't remove. The solution was surprisingly effective, even if it smelled terrible. Urine contains ammonia, a natural cleaning agent capable of breaking down grease and lifting stubborn stains. Because of this, public urinals across Roman cities were fitted with large containers where citizens could donate their urine for free. Workers then collected the liquid and transported it to fulling workshops. Inside these workshops, fullers stood barefoot in large stone tubs filled with water, cloth, and fermented urine. Their job was to stomp the garments repeatedly for hours, allowing the ammonia to penetrate the fabric and remove dirt. The smell was overwhelming. The floors were slippery, and after cleaning, every garment still had to be rinsed, brushed, stretched, and dried before it could be returned to its owner. Despite the unpleasant conditions, skilled fullers were essential to Roman society. Wealthy citizens expected their bright white togas to remain spotless, and professional cleaners became an important part of the Roman economy. Thankfully, modern washing machines have replaced one of history's foulest professions. Number 11, gong farmer. Now imagine a job where your entire day was spent surrounded by human waste. Long before modern sewer systems existed, cities faced a serious problem. Human waste accumulated in cesspits beneath homes and public buildings. Someone had to remove it. That someone was the gong farmer. Although the term became famous during medieval England, similar workers existed in many ancient cities where sanitation depended entirely on manual labor. Armed with little more than buckets, ropes, and shovels, these laborers climbed into deep pits packed with years of accumulated waste. The smell alone was unbearable. Poisonous gases such as methane and hydrogen sulfide collected inside enclosed pits, making every descent dangerous. Some workers lost consciousness after inhaling the fumes. Others never climbed back out. To reduce the danger, much of the work was performed at night, while city streets remained quiet. After filling heavy buckets with waste, the workers hauled them back to the surface before transporting the contents outside the city. It was exhausting, disgusting, and incredibly dangerous. Yet, without these workers, ancient towns would quickly have become breeding grounds for disease. Their work protected public health, even though society rarely appreciated the people doing it. Sometimes the most important jobs are also the least desirable. Number 10, leech collector. Modern hospitals use advanced medicines and sterile surgical equipment. Ancient medicine looked very different. For centuries, doctors believed that many illnesses were caused by an imbalance of the body's fluid. One common treatment was bloodletting, and that created a huge demand for leeches. Collecting them, however, was far from easy. Leech collectors often waded into cold marshes, ponds, and slow-moving rivers where thousands of blood-sucking leeches waited beneath the surface. Some collectors tied pieces of meat to strings, others simply used their own bare legs as bait. They stood motionless in the water while leeches attached themselves to their skin. Only then would they carefully remove the creatures and store them in containers to sell to physicians. The work was slow, uncomfortable, and often painful. Collectors risked infections, exposure to disease, freezing temperatures, and attacks from other animals living in the wetlands. Yet, demand remained high for for centuries because doctors believed leeches could help treat everything from headaches to fevers and high blood pressure. Today, medical science has abandoned most forms of bloodletting. Interestingly, specially bred medicinal leeches are still used in certain modern surgeries to improve blood circulation after delicate reconstructive procedures. But thankfully, no one has to stand waist deep in a freezing swamp all day just to collect them. And we've only just begun, because next, we'll meet people whose jobs place them face to face with execution, deadly battles, and some of the most dangerous underground workplaces the ancient world had ever seen. Number 9. Royal food taster. Imagine sitting down to a feast prepared for a king. The finest meat, fresh fruits, golden goblets filled with wine. Everything looks delicious. There's just one problem. You have to eat it first. Throughout many ancient kingdoms, poisoning was one of the greatest threats faced by rulers. Political rivals, ambitious nobles, and even members of the royal court sometimes saw poison as the easiest way to remove a king without starting a war. To reduce that risk, many rulers relied on trusted food tasters. Before every important meal, the taster sampled the food and drink intended for the king. Then came the hardest part, waiting. If the food contained a fast-acting poison, the taster would become sick or die before the ruler took a single bite. Fortunately, not every meal was poisoned. In fact, most food tasters lived long lives because assassination attempts were relatively rare. Even so, every royal banquet carried an element of uncertainty. One ordinary meal could suddenly become their last. It was a job built entirely on trust and the willingness to risk your own life so someone else could safely enjoy dinner. Number 8. Executioner's assistant. Justice in the ancient world was often public. Punishments weren't hidden behind prison walls. Instead, they were carried out in front of crowds as warnings to everyone else. Helping prepare those punishments was one of history's most disturbing occupations. The executioner's assistant handled much of the work that few others were willing to do. They restrained prisoners, prepared execution sites, maintained equipment, and sometimes even cleaned the area afterward. In many societies, people avoided anyone connected with executions. Although they performed an official duty, executioners and their assistants were often feared, isolated, or treated as social outcasts. The emotional burden could be just as heavy as the physical work. Watching suffering become part of your daily routine was something few people could endure. Yet governments relied on these workers to enforce the law and maintain public order. Without them, many ancient legal systems simply couldn't function. It was a necessary job, but one that came with a lifetime of stigma. Number 7. Roman sewer cleaner. Ancient Rome built one of the greatest engineering systems the world had ever seen. Its roads connected an empire, its aqueducts carried fresh water across vast distances, and beneath the busy streets, an enormous network of sewers helped remove waste from the city. The largest of these, known as the Cloaca Maxima, still amazes engineers today. But someone had to keep it working. Roman sewer cleaners entered dark underground tunnels filled with filthy water, mud, and rotting waste. The air was thick with foul odors. Dangerous gases collected in enclosed spaces. Rats, insects, and other pests thrived in the darkness. Flooding could occur without warning. A single collapse could trap workers beneath tons of stone and debris. With little natural light and almost no protective equipment, every shift carried serious risk. Yet these workers played an essential role in keeping one of the world's largest cities functioning. Without regular maintenance, blocked sewers could spread disease, contaminate water supplies, and bring daily life to a standstill. Their work was dirty, dangerous, and almost completely invisible. But thanks to them, Rome became one of the cleanest and most advanced cities of the ancient world. And somehow, the jobs ahead become even more brutal. Because next, we'll follow messengers racing across deadly battlefields. Number 6. War messenger. Long before radios, telephones, or satellites, entire armies depended on one thing: human messengers. When battles stretched across miles of rugged terrain, commanders had only one way to deliver urgent orders. Someone had to carry them. War messengers raced across active battlefields on foot or horseback, weaving through flying arrows, charging soldiers, and enemy attack. A single message could determine whether an army advanced, retreated, or survived. The danger wasn't just the battlefield. Many messengers traveled through forests, deserts, and mountains where bandits, wild animals, and harsh weather posed deadly threats. If captured by the enemy, they were often interrogated or executed to prevent military secrets. secrets from being revealed. Some carried hidden messages sewn into clothing. Others memorized commands so that nothing written could fall into enemy hands. Their speed, endurance, and courage often changed the course of history. Yet, unlike the generals they served, most of their names have been lost forever. Number 5. Ancient Tomb Builder. When we admire the pyramids of Egypt or the magnificent tombs of ancient rulers, it's easy to focus on the kings buried inside. Far less attention is given to the thousands of workers who built them. Constructing royal tombs demanded years, sometimes decades, of relentless labor. Workers hauled enormous blocks of stone weighing several tons across scorching deserts using ropes, sledges, and sheer human strength. Temperatures often climbed above 40 degrees Celsius. Shade was scarce. The work was exhausting. Inside unfinished chambers, stone dust filled the air while cramped spaces made breathing difficult. Accidents were common. Heavy blocks could slip without warning. Tools could break. A single mistake could prove fatal. Contrary to popular myth, many Egyptian pyramid builders were skilled laborers rather than slaves. Archaeological evidence suggests they received food, housing, and medical care. But that didn't make the work easy. Day after day, year after year, they pushed the limits of human endurance to create monuments that still stand thousands of years later. The rulers became legends. The builders became history's forgotten workforce. Number 4. Gladiator. Imagine walking into an enormous arena. More than 50,000 spectators are screaming your name. The gates open, and somewhere across the sand, another trained fighter is waiting. For many gladiators in ancient Rome, this wasn't entertainment. It was survival. Although some gladiators volunteered in search of fame or fortune, many were prisoners of war, enslaved people, or criminals forced into combat. Training was brutal. Fighters spent months learning swordsmanship, shield techniques, and disciplined combat under strict instructors. They followed specialized diets and intense physical conditioning, but no amount of preparation could remove the fear of entering the arena. Opponents fought with different weapons and fighting styles. Some battles featured wild animals, others involved multiple opponents. Even if a gladiator survived, serious injuries were common. Broken bones, deep wounds, and permanent disabilities ended countless careers. Successful fighters could earn fame, wealth, and even freedom. Some became celebrities admired throughout Rome, but every victory carried the knowledge that another deadly contest was never far away. For every champion remembered by history, thousands of others never walked out of the arena alive. And now, we've reached the final 3. The remaining jobs were so brutal, so unforgiving, that many workers never lived long enough to grow old. Deep beneath the earth, far from sunlight, human survival itself became part of the job. Workers building massive royal tombs under the scorching sun, and warriors whose careers depended on surviving one fight after another. Number 3. Galley slave. Imagine being chained to a wooden bench, not for hours, but for months. Beneath the deck of an ancient warship, rows of men gripped heavy wooden oars as drums echoed through the vessel. Every beat demanded another stroke. Faster, harder, longer, the lives of everyone on board depended on their strength. Although not every ancient galley used enslaved rowers. Many civilizations, including parts of the Greek and Roman worlds during certain periods, relied on prisoners, captives, or forced labor to power their fleets. Life below deck was brutal. The air was hot and humid. Space was so cramped that rowers could barely move between ships. Food was basic, clean water was limited, and disease spread quickly through the crowded conditions. During naval battles, escape was almost impossible. If the ship caught fire or sank, the chains that kept some rowers in place could also become their death sentence. Few jobs demanded such relentless physical endurance. With every stroke of the oar, exhaustion became a way of life. Number 2. Roman silver mine worker. Deep beneath the surface of the Roman Empire, another nightmare awaited. Silver was one of Rome's most valuable resources. It helped produce coins, finance armies, and expand the empire. But extracting it came at a terrible human cost. Mine workers spent their lives underground in narrow tunnels carved into solid rock. Many were enslaved people, prisoners, or convicted criminals forced into exhausting labor. Using simple iron tools, they chipped away at the rock for endless hours in darkness. Fresh air was scarce. Dust filled their lungs with every breath. Tunnel collapses could bury workers alive without warning. Flooding and toxic fumes added even more danger. Children were sometimes forced into the smallest tunnels because adults couldn't fit through the narrow passages. Ancient historians described mining as one of the harshest forms of punishment imaginable. For many workers, the mines weren't just a workplace, they were a prison from which few ever returned. Number 1. Salt mine slave. Our number 1 spot belongs to a job so exhausting, so dangerous, and and so relentlessly unforgiving that many workers never survived it. For thousands of years, salt was one of the world's most valuable resources. It preserved food, supported trade, and sustained entire civilizations. But obtaining it often meant descending into vast underground salt mines. Inside these mines, workers spent endless days cutting enormous blocks of salt from solid rock using primitive hand tools. The air was thick with dust. Every swing of the pickaxe echoed through the tunnels. Sharp salt crystals sliced exposed skin. Heavy loads had to be carried through steep passages with little rest. Many workers suffered from dehydration, lung disease, blindness caused by constant dust exposure, and chronic injuries that never healed. Cave-ins could strike without warning. Poor ventilation made breathing difficult, and for enslaved laborers, there was often no escape. To the powerful rulers who profited from salt, it was known as white gold. But for the people forced to mine it, it was a life of suffering hidden beneath the earth. Few ancient jobs demanded more or gave less in return. From washing clothes with urine, to crawling through sewers, to rowing warships and digging deep beneath the earth, these forgotten workers carried civilizations on their backs. The monuments, roads, armies, and kingdoms we admire today were built not only by famous rulers, but by ordinary people performing extraordinary and often unimaginable labor. History usually remembers kings, but it was workers like these who kept the ancient world alive. So, which of these ancient jobs do you think would have been the hardest to survive? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories from history, archaeology, and the ancient world.